13 American service members have now been killed in the Iran war. The latest, 6 Americans on board a tanker aircraft that crashed in Iraq. What happened? In just a moment, I'm going to speak with a former Top Gun instructor and a fighter pilot about this plane and why it may have gone down. Meanwhile, is the new supreme leader of Iran supremely wounded? Secretary of War Pete Hegseth thinks so.
They've gone underground, cowering. That's what rats do. We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. He put out a statement yesterday, a weak one, actually, but there was no voice and there was no video. It was a written statement.
And because the threats and violence doesn't stop and is growing, synagogues across America are on edge. Yesterday, an attack in Michigan, kids at the synagogue were in class.
This is not a political moment. This is not a political debate. This is targeting babies who are Jewish. That's anti-Semitism at its absolute worst.
I will speak with the rabbi from that Michigan synagogue as more and more Jewish places of worship come under attack in America. But first, Iran is getting slammed by strikes from the United States and Israel. Video shows explosions in Tehran. This as thousands in Iran were rallying in the streets in support of Palestinians and calling for Israel's demise. Today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held his first news conference since the war began on February 28th. Netanyahu said Israel is creating the conditions for the fall of the Iranian regime. But Netanyahu added, the fall is not guaranteed. Why? He says the power lies in the hands of the Iranians.
אמרתי, it's up to you. זה תלוי בכם. אתה יכול להוביל מישהו לשוקת. אתה לא יכול להכריח אותו לשתות.
Senior correspondent John Huddy joins me from Tel Aviv. John?
Yeah, and Greta, literally as you're speaking, we have a U.S. Air Force cargo jet that's flying overhead, flying into Ben Gurion Airport. Air sirens, by the way, went off about 2 hours ago, warning of an incoming ballistic missile. It was intercepted, but apparently some cluster munitions and debris came down just east of Tel Aviv, actually near the airport, causing some damage. No reports of any injuries. But as I've been reporting, these ballistic missiles, more than half of them that have been fired by Iran, carry these cluster bombs, these cluster munitions. I will say, though, that Iran's ballistic missile attacks on Israel, Greta, have definitely decreased. We aren't seeing the frequency, going back even a week ago, but they haven't stopped entirely. In fact, an Iranian ballistic missile landed in the village of Zarzir very early this morning, around 3 a.m. local time. Zarzir is an Arab-Israeli village, a Bedouin village near Nazareth, the ancient city of Nazareth. And the IDF tells me about 85 people were wounded, mostly minor and moderate injuries. Remarkably enough, though, a family of 6 living in the house right next to the lot where the missile landed, leaving this huge crater, all survived with just minor injuries. They were in apparently a reinforced room, a safe space. Israel's President Isaac Herzog toured the site earlier this afternoon saying, quote, from Lebanon and from Iran, they are trying to kill Muslims too. I also, Greta, spoke with a member of Israel's Knesset, Yair Golan, about the attack and the ongoing joint effort between the United States and Israel in this operation to dismantle the IRGC. Here's in part what he told me about that. Listen.
Look, the military activity is quite impressive and formidable. And no doubt that we have managed up to now, by this mutual effort, to impose a terrible blow to the Iranian regime and to the Hezbollah. But it's not enough. Right now, what we need is a regional and a global vision of the region.
Yeah, and that includes defeating the radical Islamic ideology that really continues with these terrorist groups and Iran's proxies. Today's attack, Greta, was unusual because Iran has mostly been targeting southern and central Israel, the Tel Aviv region. But Iran is also, as I've been talking about a lot, coordinating with Hezbollah, its terrorist proxy, as you know, in Lebanon. Hezbollah this week really increased, ratcheted up its attacks on northern central Israel, also firing surface-to-surface missiles at not only central Israel, but Tel Aviv earlier this week as well. And one final note, Greta, quickly about that KC-135 Stratotanker. Multiple Stratotankers, these KC-135s, are coming in every day. I've seen that on one day. I saw 7 of them coming in 1 hour, landing at Ben Gurion, refueling, and then heading back out. This is a clear example of the ongoing coordination and cooperation between the United States and Israel. Greta?
John, is there any update on it, because you're on the ground and maybe you know, maybe you've heard something on the new supreme leader? Has anything been said? I mean, he hasn't been seen, and naturally everybody's curious. No. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, said that maybe he's been disfigured or something, but are you hearing anything?
Yeah, so that's kind of what the reporting is here in the Israeli media, and IDF officials questioning if he was severely injured, if he's even alive. There have been reports, and these are unconfirmed, mind you, okay? So I want to be clear about that maybe he's in a coma, maybe he's got a stand-in who wrote that message, if it even came from him. We just don't know. He hasn't been seen in public since Monday when he was, appointed the successor to his father by the Assembly of Experts in Iran. There's been no video of him. He's clearly in hiding. So at this point, it's just a lot of speculation, but we don't know at this point much more than that. Greta, back to you.
John Huddy in Tel Aviv, thank you. As I mentioned, 6 American service members died in the Air Force plane crash in Iraq. The plane is a KC-135. It's a refueling tanker aircraft. It was supporting the war against Iran. The military says 2 tanker aircrafts were involved in the incident. One of the 2 landed safely. Here's what Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane said earlier.
The incident occurred over friendly territory in western Iraq while the crew was on a combat mission, and again was not the result, as CENTCOM has said, was not the result of hostile or friendly fire. We're still treating this as an active rescue and recovery operation.
The loss of these 6 service members brings the U.S. death toll in the Iran war to 13. Retired Marine Corps fighter pilot and Top Gun instructor Dave Berke joins me. Nice to talk to you, sir. And I guess we should start by saying how, that our hearts bleed for the families of those, and the ones who lost their lives, and of course their families are mourning today. It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you for starting with that. That's exactly right. This is heartbreaking, especially for the families involved.
Yeah, indeed it is. So let's talk about these planes. These are big planes, got a lot of fuel in them. I don't know how much fuel they can carry, but why are they near each other? Do you think one was sort of half empty and trying to refuel the other one to be full, maybe, so that it could return then get a full load of fuel? Or, how is it that they would get close enough to each other in the air that they could have any collision?
Yeah, that's entirely possible. And what you described is definitely a scenario. It's a little speculation. I know the investigation is ongoing, but there are times that do exactly what you said. They will refuel each other and consolidate up to 200,000 pounds of fuel. And what I know about aerial refueling operations, regardless of who's involved, it's aircraft in close proximity to each other, which means there's always risk associated with it.
You say close proximity. Actually, you used to fly out of Nellis, those Raptors, and I remember listening to pilots talk about close proximity, and it was something like 3 feet, which is like not, you said it was not close, whoever it was, and that seems pretty close to me. But when they do this refueling to refueling, how close are they? How long is that boom?
Yeah, you're right. It's a matter of feet. I did this in fighters, F-22s, F-18s, F-35s, right up against that exact same aircraft. When you're doing it tanker to tanker, you're talking about 10 feet sometimes, really, really close distances, especially in relation to the size of these airplanes. These are big airplanes, so they are really right next to each other, really close.
Well, there's a picture, and it hasn't been confirmed, that's been floating around the internet where the vertical stabilizer on the plane that did survive is clipped off. So it almost seems like that something hit it from above. It's the suggestion, and it's just my guess is that it was clipped off by the other plane, and it was above it.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's entirely possible. And you could see just a few more feet off that impact, and you can lose the entire rudder. One of the biggest problems with aircraft like this, if they do have an air-to-air collision, those tend to be catastrophic. It's really hard to recover a plane like this when you lose a major control surface like a rudder that you see in that picture.
That plane's an old workhorse. I don't think they've made them since, I think, I don't know what, since the mid-60s. I mean, that's been an important part of our Air Force.
Yeah, it's a perfect word. That is a workhorse. That is a 707 variety aircraft. That thing has been around 60 plus years. The KC-135 and variant similar to it is an absolute workhorse. They are prolific. We've been using these for decades. It's a reliable airplane. It's a really good airplane for its capability. This is a heartbreaking, very rare, tragic event.
Is the reason why we have them there is because we send these fighter planes off from our bases, and they can just go so far because they don't carry the fuel that big plane, and so you've got to, in order even some of them to make it back, we've got to refuel them. I mean, is that the purpose of them, because of getting them up there?
Yeah, Greta, you're spot on. That's exactly right. They are there specifically to extend the airborne life of the aircraft that are doing the fighting, the dropping the bombs, using those weapons. In a fighter, you carry maybe 10, 15,000 pounds of gas, sometimes a little bit more, and you can burn through that very quickly. And when you're carrying a lot of weapons, what you'll do is maybe drop some weapons, go back to the tanker, get more gas, and be able to sustain yourself overhead. Those tankers are absolutely required. We cannot function without them. They perform a vital service. And every now and then something catastrophic and terrible happens, and that's probably what's going on in this case.
I don't remember hearing about another one of these. And I mean, the last few years, last couple decades. Maybe it happens often. I haven't paid attention, but I mean, it's really extraordinary what these pilots do. I mean, I don't even. How do you train for this? To stay 10 feet away on a boom, basically getting fuel. How do you train to sort of make your plane fly in sync with a tanker?
Yeah, well, the only way to train for it is to do it. And what you're saying is really, I think, exactly right, is the American military, and we've always been able to do this, and we're doing this right now, is we make the extraordinary seem routine. No different than flying and taking off and landing off an aircraft carrier. Getting gas from another jet like that is something we do all the time. We make it look easy because we do it so well and so often. But honestly, you have a very thin margin for error. When things happen, they happen so rarely that it's something we're not accustomed to. But this is a dangerous, dangerous business that we're in. We make it look easy because of how good we are at it. And sometimes things don't work out, and we have to find out what happened. But this is obviously a catastrophic case.
Well, the tanker has a crew of, well, at least now we know of 6, or at least this one did. The fighter planes, do they always have a crew of more than one because someone's flying the plane, or is the pilot flying the plane also have to be able to navigate to fly at the same speed and to be able to get that boom to connect to his plane without help?
Yeah, most American fighters are single-seat aircraft. We're flying by ourselves. Sometimes you have a 2-seat aircraft where someone's in the back, but either way, the pilot is always the one flying, and we essentially flying a very close formation. You're moving the throttles to match the speed exactly to that tanker in front of you, and they're either using their probe in the Air Force variant where you have that long probe, or you have the naval variant where there's a basket and you're trying to plug your probe into that basket. It's delicate, difficult stuff. Again, we make it look easy. And the only way to train for it is to do it over and over and over again.
And I suppose, and the speeds are so dramatically different. I mean, the fighter pilot has to slow down because I imagine that that tanker doesn't fly at the same speed that that an F-16 or an F-18 will fly.
Yeah, we will slow down to that speed. It's much slower than we normally do during tactical missions. The flying around it isn't that difficult to get up in that formation, but getting into the basket and staying in the basket or staying right in that position for the probe, that takes a lot of work on behalf of the pilot. He's busy when that's happening.
Dave Berke, thank you for your service, and thank you for explaining this to me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for including me. I appreciate it.
Coming up, the rabbi of the synagogue viciously attacked yesterday joins me. That when the record continues.
Information. Truth. Is power. Is freedom. Is money. Is health. Is Newsmax. Millions watch it. So can you. Newsmax is real news for real people.
With less burning, itching, and pain from moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, imagine being 1,000,000 miles away. With Tremfya, clearer skin is possible. Most people saw 100% clear skin that stayed clear even at 5 years. serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Imagine being a million miles away. Ask your doctor about Trimfaya.
Buying a new car? You need WeatherTech. Perhaps a nice used car? You need WeatherTech. Or maybe you're still driving Old Faithful. You need WeatherTech. No matter the age of your vehicle, American-made WeatherTech products are the solution. Because the Maxes don't care what year your vehicle is.
See? You do need WeatherTech.
Order your American-made protection at WT.com.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
When is enough enough? Well, it's not stopping. I'm talking about terror attacks in this country. Yesterday saw 2 more domestic terror attacks against American citizens, one showing the growing anti-Semitism in this country. At Old Dominion University in Virginia, a gunman opened fire in a classroom. 1 person was killed and 2 others injured. Authorities say the attacker was subdued by students and died. The shooter has been identified as Mohammed Baylor Jallo. The FBI says the shooter shouted, "Allahu Akbar." In 2016, Jallo was arrested. He pleaded guilty to providing material support to ISIS. The judge sentenced him to 11 years in prison. He only did 6 of the 11 years. In 2024, he got out of prison, which was 5 years early. He was supposedly under supervised release. The man Jallo shot yesterday in the ROTC class at Old Dominion University was Brandon Shaw. He was an Army Lieutenant Colonel and ROTC instructor. Now to the second act of terrorism yesterday. That was outside Detroit. A man drove his car filled with explosives into Temple Israel Synagogue. DHS says the man was Ayman Mohammed Ghazali. He was killed when confronted and shot by security inside the synagogue. DHS says the attacker was a naturalized U.S. citizen who was born in Lebanon. As vicious as this attack was, this attack could have been a lot worse.
This is a place of worship, but at the time that this attack was occurred, it was a school. 104 children, age 5 and younger here. Temple Israel is a pillar of the community. It's one of the largest Reformed Jewish congregations in North America, with Friday night Shabbat services attracting over 1,000 people. People celebrate bar and bat mitzvahs, weddings, and holidays here. Parents bring their children to daycare and school, and it's a place of peace, unity, light, and life. Yesterday's attack was anti-Semitism.
It's horrible. Major attacks against Jewish organizations are not new. Look at this map. These are attacks against Jewish institutions just since 2018. Some of these include the 2018 Tree of Life shooting where 11 people were killed, the 2019 shooting at the Chabad of Poway in Southern California where 1 person died, 3 others injured. In 2022, the hostage crisis at the Colleyville Synagogue where luckily the hostages were not killed. Last year, the shooting at the Capitol Jewish Museum right here in Washington, D.C. That's when 2 Israeli staffers at their embassy were gunned down. The young people were planning to get engaged. Because of these attacks and many more, plus the constant threats, many Jewish institutions have had to hire their own security. Rabbi Jen Lader from Temple Israel Synagogue in West Bloomfield, Michigan, joins me. Nice to see you, Rabbi. And
thank you for having
it's
me.
just so. It is just there are just no words to explain how horrible and horrifying all this is. And I must admit, I tip my hat to your security. They did a great job.
They are unbelievable heroes.
Indeed they are. But just the thought that you have to have security is insane. I mean, and I know you have to have security. I mean, here, all across the country, every synagogue, every Jewish school, everything has to have security because otherwise you're gonna, something like this might happen.
Right. And the amount of money that we and every other Jewish institution spends on security in this country, the number was like $1 billion a year, which is just outrageous. Think of the amount of good work and people we could feed and and we could do so many things if we could not turn our synagogues into fortresses. But we're really grateful to our incredible, heroic, courageous, brave security team who kept us safe, to our regular training, and our teachers from our school who kept our kids calm and collected. And we're just really, really lucky that our protocols worked, that we were prepared, and that there were no casualties in this event.
But, you know, it's like, I don't even know what you tell those children. Those 104, I think is what the governor said there were. You know, you want to teach children to grow up and be good people and to do good things and everything. And yet they're the subject of the, I mean, I'm sure they know this happened. I mean, most of them know that's happened. This couldn't be hidden from them. Someone drove a car into the building. But, I mean, what do you tell the children?
Luckily, again, our teachers in our preschool were spectacular, and they love our children as much as their parents do, and they kept them calm. And we have video of them singing "Wheels on a Bus," sitting in the corner of a darkened room with the shades drawn, following protocol, which is just devastating to see. But look, our kids are aware. We're not naive. We've been moving through this world for quite a number of years, feeling like we have targets on our backs, and we do the best we can to prepare our children for the world in which they live. And so while I'm confident that the kids who are involved in this tragedy will be fine, and thank God, thank security, thank everybody that they are safe. This is something that Jewish children have to learn, that they need to be prepared and they need to follow instructions, and we need security in our buildings to prevent tragedies like this.
But this is endless. You know, it's like I've been covering these stories. I'm older than you are, but I've been covering these stories way too long. And
Yeah.
and I've talked. A lot of the. I've been to Auschwitz. I've seen what happens. Back during the Holocaust. I've seen what Jews have had to put up with in this country. And with all the sort of hope that we're putting this behind us, it is now. I mean, it's just rearing its ugly head right now. It's like whether it's on campuses or whatever. I mean, it's just. There's just. It's growing all around us like a cancer.
I agree. It is horrific, and we need help. We need help from people like you, and we're really grateful for you giving us a platform. But there aren't that many Jews out there. There aren't that many of us. We're a small minority. We're 2% of the population, and we need everyone else to stand up and help protect us and make sure this cancer doesn't spread. We need help, and we're asking for help, and we need you to help us.
How can we help you? What can we do? I mean, it's like I feel like it's just sort of a potted plant sitting here getting angry every time I have to report on one of these, or I have to talk to somebody, or I hear from a friend who knows somebody who's changed his name because it's a Jewish name and doesn't want his kids to have a Jewish name because they're so scared to have their kids go to a school with a Jewish last name. I mean, the stories are just incredible.
Yeah, well, it's not just us. I was speaking with someone this morning, and he was asking me what I was going to talk about with my congregation tonight, and I said, look, I just pulled out my Colleyville sermon, my Tree of Life sermon, my MSU sermon, my Oxford sermon, my Parkland sermon. This is a catastrophic world in which we live, and we need our allies to stand up for us. We need our allies to speak out against disgusting, hateful, bigoted rhetoric all over the internet. Words really, really matter, and words turn into actions, as we've seen this week. That it's not enough to say, oh, it's just talk. It's just people hiding behind a screen. We are well aware that talk turns into action, and so we need other people to stand up for us and stand with us in these challenging moments, not just during an attack, but before an attack and after an attack.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, there are even a lot of people in the media who are rearing their ugly head on this topic. It's like, people I know, people that surprised me. I mean, I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. What's bringing this out in them? I mean, what in the world have the Jews done? What have these Jewish kids done? It's like, it really is a level of insanity, because there's no explanation for it other than just hate.
It's a perfect way to describe it, an insanity. It feels absolutely insane to see major news networks and articles justifying these kinds of acts based on a conflict thousands and thousands of miles away, justifying somebody ramming their car full of explosives into our preschool full of our babies is insane. And I even after this many years and even after this many articles, I am shocked every single time. I just can't believe it.
I was in Israel both after October 7th reporting, but I was there 6 months earlier when a Palestinian came out of Gaza who was getting medical care in Israel, and he's driving his car into crowds and then getting out with a knife and trying to stab people. And one major news organization referred to him as a driver. I thought, a driver? I mean, that's a driver? You out of your mind? I mean, it's a guy gets out of a car trying to run people over and then stab them, and the headline is that he's a driver. Anyway, I wish you the best of luck tonight with your congregants, and I just don't know what else to say to you. But thank you for joining me.
Thank you for being such a good ally for us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Coming up, Iran has help. Find out who and what when the record continues.
52 days, 3,200 miles to reach freedom. Facing typhoons, Japanese ships, submarines, and airplanes. Lack of water, food, and a visit to a large leper colony. The incredible World War II escape of Americans Damon Gauss and William Osborne.
Mike Keppel here, Patriot Software's founder. I started my entrepreneurial journey selling greeting cards door-to-door when I was 10. At age 16, I had workers' comp insurance for my employees. Some kids were good at sports, but I was a business geek kind of a kid. While other kids were making home runs, I was making money. That's when I learned about capitalism and free enterprise. My fifth successful business, Patriot Software, helps entrepreneurs build their businesses and keep their money. For affordable accounting and payroll, go to patriotsoftware.com.
Kibble. It's been the standard for decades, and it's failing our dogs. That's why we created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete. It's gently air-dried, locking in the nutrients and the flavor dogs go wild for. Visit your local pet food retailer today.
What if you could have shades like these for a fraction of big brand prices? With Shelby Rays, you can. We're an independent company, so we do things differently. We offer high-quality polarized shades for a reasonable price. And we personally replace shades that get lost or broken. So far, we've racked up over 300,000 five-star reviews. I founded Shelby Rays so that we can have sunglasses that stand up to whatever life throws at us. Order now and get 20% off site-wide at ShavyRays.com.
A dedicated mentor, an empowered parent, an effective after-school program, digital literacy tools that protect kids online. These are just some of the solutions to the Youth Mental Health Challenge. At the Coalition to Empower Our Future, we're bringing together experts in youth well-being to solve this complex challenge. Our mission? Keep kids happy and healthy. Learn more at empowerourfuturecoalition.com/solutions. Paid for by the Coalition to Empower Our Future.
What if your GLP-1 for weight loss was as easy to take as a mint? Small, discreet, and easy. Think about that. No needles. This is compounded tirzepatide, a mint-flavored tablet designed to fit into your daily routine. You simply let it dissolve under your tongue. No mixing, filling, or storing your own syringes. Tirzepatide helps curb appetite and supports healthier eating by reducing cravings, including for sweets and carbs. And when your appetite feels under control, it can make it easier to eat less and move intentionally towards your weight loss goals. If weight loss has been on your mind, this may be the needle-free option you've been looking for. A simple daily tablet, as easy to take as a mint. Getting started is fast and surprisingly accessible. Just complete a quick online physician consultation. Here's how.
Save $50 with promo code SLIM at noneedles.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at noneedles.com/slim.
Hurry in for the March Floorbusters sale at Lumber Liquidators, now through March 17th. Discover yellow and black savings no other store can match. Waterproof vinyl flooring as low as 39 cents a square foot. Laminate flooring as low as 67 cents a square foot. Solid hardwood flooring as low as 79 cents a square foot. These prices are as low as floors can go. So don't wait. Sale ends March 17th. Shop nationwide or online at lumberliquidators.com.
Okay, I confess I'd love to be the fly on the wall for this meeting. In just over 2 weeks, President Trump will be wheels down in Beijing, China. He will be meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and at a time when there's great turmoil in the world and between trading partners. According to the South China Morning Post, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be with President Trump. This is surprising because in 2020, China sanctioned Rubio. They were mad at Rubio for his criticism of Beijing's policies in Hong Kong and the Xinjiang region. And the Xinjiang region is the area of human rights abuses by the China Communist Party against Uyghurs, which is a Turkic ethnic group. And just yesterday, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark said this about China on this news show.
They do have the indigenous assembly capacity, but they're getting their rocket fuel from China. And there are a couple of Chinese ships on the way, apparently, to Iran right now. They're getting some of their drone technology and they're targeting from Russia. So it's not just the question of will this escalate? The point is, it is escalating because this is not an isolated Iran. This is Iran as an agent of powers that are adversaries of the United States.
And according to President Trump, China is not the only nation helping Iran. Today, President Trump told the media he believes that the Russian President Vladimir Putin is helping Iran in its war against the U.S. and Israel. Meanwhile, yesterday, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent took to X. He posted in part, quote, President Trump is taking decisive steps to promote stability in global energy markets and is working to keep prices low as we address the threat and instability posed by the terrorist Iranian regime. To increase the global reach of existing supply, the U.S. Treasury is providing a temporary authorization to permit countries to purchase Russian oil currently stranded at sea. This narrowly tailored short-term measure applies only to oil already in transit and will not provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government, which derives the majority of its energy revenue from taxes assessed at the point of extraction, end quote. Foreign correspondent Shelby Wilder has the latest and joins me. Shelby.
Greta, that exemption from the Trump administration is set to last 30 days, though there are concerns it could be extended if the war in the Middle East continues. As you cited, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he did acknowledge that it was, in his words, unfortunate that Russia would benefit financially from the move, although they were saying, hopefully, the Trump administration, that it would only be in the short term. However, critics, including Ukraine and its allies, say easing sanctions will help fund Vladimir Putin's war machine. We heard Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky state today that the decision, in his words, certainly does not help peace. Donald Trump spoke with Vladimir Putin on Monday, as the U.S. had already eased some sanctions on Russian oil earlier this month, including granting India a temporary waiver to continue purchasing that Russian crude, as you mentioned, that is at sea and otherwise in transit. The move comes despite Trump's push since returning to office to curb global reliance on Russian energy. However, the war with Iran has clearly complicated that effort, at least for now. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin's economic envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, held talks in Florida on Thursday with Trump representatives, including envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Dmitriev later claimed that Washington is, quote, beginning to better understand, end quote, the importance of Russian oil. He said this came after a productive meeting with U.S. officials. Otherwise, the latest data suggests that Russia is generating an additional $150 million per day in revenue due to surging oil prices, with Moscow earning at least $6.9 billion from fossil fuel exports in just the 2 weeks since the start of the U.S.-Israel war with Iran. And that surge, as I noted, has drawn concern and criticism in Ukraine and across Europe as Russia's revenues rise amid the broader conflict in the Middle East. Greta?
Shelby Wilder, as always, thank you. Former U.S. Ambassador in NATO and former U.S. Special Representative to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, joins me. Sir, can you sort of put this together for me? I don't fully understand diplomacy and world politics to this extent. Here we've got a country, Russia, supplying drone technology to Iran to fire at U.S. military and Israeli military, yet President Trump and Putin are talking, they're chatting about oil. And meanwhile, with the oil is that Russia is making more money as the oil prices go up. I mean, it seems like I don't know who's winning and who's losing in this.
Greta, you hit it right on the head. This is flailing around. What's happened here is we got into a war that is not just ending quickly. The regime in Iran is not just going away. They actually have been able to shut down the Strait of Hormuz for some period of time. And by just attacking a ship here and there, through denial, they can continue to keep ships from flowing through the strait there. So what are we doing? We're now looking around for other ways to get oil and gas in the market. So we jump from one problem to the next problem to the next problem, and we fail to see that these are all connected. These are all one problem. We have adversaries, Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, that are working together. They are harming U.S. interests wherever they can. And, you know, we wouldn't be giving the Iranians cash if they wanted to get their oil on the market and sell that. Why are we giving the Russians cash? They're working together against us.
And even like, you know, turning to Western Europe, I mean, you were the U.S. ambassador to NATO, and we had Secretary General Mark Rutte on the other day, and he says that Article 5 has not been triggered because it has not been an attack on a NATO member territory. But on the other hand, you've got two attacks, at least on France, on two French bases, one that it shares with the Kurds in northern Iraq, in which a Frenchman was killed. But France, and you've got Macron, who said in 2020, we're never going to let Iran get a nuclear weapon. Yet, you know, the United States is left sort of holding the bag on all this.
Right. Well, I think here, first off, NATO has a geographic limit, and it is an attack on the territory of NATO members that counts for Article 5. There have been three missiles fired at Turkey.
Let me stop you there, though, is that I know from a long time ago research is that the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, when they overtook the embassy in November of 1979, that was considered, because as U.S. Embassy, that was U.S. territory. Every embassy here in Washington is the territory of the country that occupies it. So I don't understand why, you know, these bases, when they belong to like France in a foreign country, don't belong to, isn't, you know, a NATO territory.
Right. Well, the territory for NATO is actually defined in the NATO treaty, and it is geographically the territory of NATO countries. And it does include, it did include at the time, say, the French departments of Algeria, which France was a colonial power. But they didn't include British colonial territories in other parts of the world. And they did not include even some parts of territories or bases that the U.S. had elsewhere. So we have looked at this in a limited way. That being said, you're raising a different point, Greta, which is right. It is now, whether you agreed with the decision to launch this war or not, we're now in it. The Ayatollahs are extremely dangerous. They are wreaking havoc with the global economy. They have been brutal to their own people. We and our European allies share an interest now in making sure that this war is ended, and ended in a way that this regime is no longer in power. So we should be pulling together with our allies. They should be helping as much as they can at this point, even if they didn't want this to start. Right now, we all have a vested interest in ending it the right way.
Well, I don't know any country, even, so we went through the list yesterday. We've gone through all the lists of the American presidents who said that Iran should never have a nuclear weapon. And then yesterday, I think it was yesterday, went through all the countries' leaders, including Saudi Arabia, which says Iran should never have a nuclear weapon. But it's all been chatter and talk. There's been no action. And now we've got the situation where you have 13 dead Americans, and you know, and it's terribly tragic. But we're not getting any. It doesn't seem like we're getting any help from the same people who don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
Well, I think we are getting some help. I mean, we have our bases in the region. They're providing a home for them. They're providing air defense there as well. They are not taking part in the military action against Iran. And that is because this is a broader goal than just taking out nuclear weapons. If that was the goal, I think we could have achieved that and be done. But we have launched a much bigger war now. And I think, on the one hand, I think they feel very uncertain about that. They're not sure that the U.S. is going to finish the job here, and they don't want to be holding the bag. On the other hand, as I said, I think they and our European allies all have a vested interest now in seeing that the Iranian regime is once and for all removed. Because a wounded, bitter Iranian regime that stays in place is going to attack their interests, it's going to attack our interests, it's going to seek to build nuclear weapons all over again. So I agree with you that we now share an interest in finishing the job.
What's the finishing job? The Iranian regime, as we know it, the IRGC, they're gone. Is that what's? I mean, is that the only way to finish it?
That's what I'm saying.
Then
yes.
with that,
yes.
Yeah, and then following that is, of course, is the uncertainty of what's to follow. Is that making sure that whoever is left behind, whoever is there, is that chaos doesn't break out almost in a civil war.
Well, we would certainly hope not. You'd hope that they would consolidate around somebody else who would be an interim leader of some kind, who would actually want to establish peace. Right now, we are waging a war, and Iran, under this regime, is determined to fight back to the last Iranian. And if we could actually end up with somebody else who just wants to stop the war, we could probably make some progress. But right now, that's not the case. We have to push this all the way.
Ambassador, nice to talk to you as always. Thank you, sir.
It's good to see you, Greta. Thank you.
Nice to see you. Coming up, you may not believe this one. Senate Republicans and Democrats actually agree on something. That one, the record continues.
I think the biggest selling point for Newsmax is we're not doing the same boring, predictable news. You flip through the other channels, you got these high-paid hosts. They say the same thing every night. You know what they're going to say. It's a little different.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, owner of the company that sells an incredible nutritional supplement called Amino 150. I'm celebrating my 92nd birthday in excellent health and condition because I've been consuming 70 minerals and 80 other nutrients found in Amino 150. I don't have arthritis, diabetes, heart problems, dementia, or anything else. My blood pressure average is 119/72. My PSA is 0.00. I can still run, jump, and climb a ladder, dance for hours, or do anything else I want to do. Now, if you want to live a ripe old age and still have all of your marbles and muscles, you should try Amino 150. Regardless of your age, chances are you're not in excellent health because you lack many minerals in your diet. Now, don't hesitate any longer. Try Amino 150 so you can surprise your doctor the next time you get a physical. Amino 150 may be the best food supplement in the world. Thank you and God bless.
My husband is Miguel Cervantes, who was a firefighter with the Rancho Cucamonga Fire District. That's what he absolutely loved. My husband's cancer is directly related to his service as a firefighter. My immediate thought after he was gone was, how am I going to do this? Tunnel to Towers said that it would be their honor to help me out by covering my mortgage. To say that it's been a weight lifted off my shoulder would be an understatement.
Total Beats, America's best-selling Beats brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews today.
The Wall Street Journal said silver could be the trade of a decade.
Eric Sprott said $250 to $500 an ounce is entirely possible.
Gold recently surpassed its inflation-adjusted all-time high. Silver's inflation-adjusted all-time high is $209 an ounce.
And silver went up 1,300% from 1974 to 1980. Silver's got a lot of room to run.
Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 1-800-778-4156.
Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide. The only firm nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the No Fee for Life IRA. See how easy it is to protect your IRA with physical gold and silver.
Call now, 1-800-778-4156.
You moved in. You nested.
Hey, what are you doing?
You partied. You cuddled. You made egg rolls. You slept in. Or tried to. And you kept growing. Now it's time for the next chapter. With Open Door, get an all-cash offer for your home in 24 hours. Because saying goodbye should be the hardest part. Move into your future with Open Door.
That's right, we have an update alert today. Former Fulton County Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade and former boyfriend of Fulton County DA Fani Willis testified before a Georgia Senate subcommittee. The committee is investigating allegations of misconduct against DA Willis. You might remember Willis hired Wade, her former boyfriend, to prosecute President Trump and 18 others. The prosecution involved alleged interference in the 2020 election in Georgia. Wade was removed from prosecuting the case once Willis and Wade's romantic relationship was exposed. Following that, in November of 2025, the case was dismissed after the court banned Willis and her office from handling the case. This banning was due to a, quote, appearance of impropriety. That stemmed from the fact Willis, rather than assigning one of the many prosecutors in her office to prosecute the case, had gone outside her office and hired her then, of course, boyfriend, Nathan Wade, and hired him, by the way, at a hefty price for the county. Wade was initially scheduled to testify last month, but he was a no-show. But today, Wade did show up. Here's a clip of Wade's testimony.
My appointment to becoming a special prosecutor dealt with my familiarity in terms of being a municipal judge and Ms. Willis being a municipal judge at the same time. We developed a sort of a mentor-mentee relationship over that course of time.
Oh, don't get me started on that excuse. Anyway, meanwhile, can Republicans and Democrats agree on anything? The answer is surprisingly yes. Yesterday, the Senate passed a landmark housing bill called the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. The vote was 89-10 to pass the bill. The no votes came from conservatives and Hawaii Democratic Senator Brian Schatz. This bill, if passed by the House, will create more housing supply. It would also update and improve a federal program to build affordable housing. The bill would stop big companies from buying single-family homes. The bipartisan legislation is spearheaded by Republican South Carolina Senator Tim Scott and Democrat Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Today, the average age of a first-time home buyer is 40 years old before you ever experience the American dream.
We just don't have enough housing in America, and we need more housing of every kind. Housing for first-time home buyers, housing for renters, housing for seniors, for people with disabilities, for people who have no housing, for people growing their families, rural, urban, and what this bill is about is more.
The bill now heads from the Senate to the other side of the Hill to the House. Will it pass there? Unclear. Last month, the House passed its own version of the bill, which is different from what just passed in the Senate. Some conservative members of the House oppose some of what is in the Senate bill. They argue banning investors from buying homes could raise prices. But if the House and the Senate can work out their differences and get the bill to President Trump's desk and he signs it, this would become the first major housing bill in about 3 decades. And today is the day our hardworking TSA workers are missing their first full paycheck due to the partial government shutdown. Terrible, isn't it? They work for our safety and we don't pay them. As of right now, efforts to negotiate a bipartisan compromise to reopen the Department of Homeland Security and pay TSA has stalled. So there's no end in sight to end this partial government shutdown. According to internal TSA statistics obtained exclusively by CBS News, during this partial government shutdown, unscheduled absences among airport security officers have more than doubled, and more than 300 employees have left the TSA agency. Coming up, President Trump has cut off fuel to Cuba. Now, could Cuba want to cut a deal? That when the record continues.
Just in time for our country's big celebration, the Kids Guide to America's 250th birthday is here, and it's free. Give your kids this epic story of freedom, heroes, and fireworks. Get it at freeusagift.com. That's freeusagift.com.
Pump up the volume.
Go ahead. Crank the volume. We got you. USPS has increased daily package processing capacity by 46% in the past 5 years. And with USPS Ground Advantage, your packages stay in our secure network, dock to door, nationwide. For full visibility, near real-time tracking, affordable pricing, for peace of mind. USPS Ground Advantage.
Satellite internet that's fast, reliable, and installed by professionals. For work, for play, for every day. Available anywhere you call home. Visit Viasat.com/internet now or call 833-8Viasat to sign up today.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
All exposure to products that contain asbestos can be harmful. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with mesothelioma, please call. Our firm has been exclusively dedicated to mesothelioma victims for decades. Let us meet you in your home, office, anywhere, and offer you our MesoCare promise. Our dedication to you is unmatched. Call now for our free book.
Call 800-801-8000 or go to mesobook.com.
Kibble. It's been the standard for decades, and it's failing our dogs. That's why we created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete. It's gently air-dried, locking in the nutrients and the flavor dogs go wild for. Visit your local pet food retailer today.
Cuba is releasing more than 50 prisoners. The Vatican gets the credit. Cuba's foreign minister just met with Pope Leo. Yesterday, Cuba released a statement saying, in part, quote, "In the spirit of goodwill and the close and fluid relations between the Cuban state and the Vatican, the Cuban government has decided to release 51 people," adding, quote, "All have served a significant portion of their sentences and have maintained good conduct in prison," end quote. Cuban officials did not identify which prisoners, nor what they were in prison for. Meanwhile, today, Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel confirmed that Cuban and U.S. officials have open lines of communication. This as a U.S. blockade on oil leads to fuel shortages and power blackouts in Cuba. 41 days ago, Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped. There have been no suspects, no proof of life. Well, yesterday, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos gave an update.
We believe we know why he did this, and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that. And so it'd be silly to tell people, yeah, don't worry about it. You're not his target. Don't think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, you're safe.
So Sheriff Nanos now says he believes it was a targeted crime, but then oddly says he's not 100% sure. In other words, he has no idea. Nancy Guthrie, the Mother Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, was last seen on the evening of January 31 at her home in Arizona. Since then, it's a mystery. Coming up, I don't live in the mountains or in a rural area. I live in the city. My home security sent me a message on my phone. There was a bear walking around my home.
52 days, 3,200 miles to reach freedom. Facing typhoons, Japanese ships, submarines, and airplanes. Lack of water, food, and a visit to a large leper colony. The incredible World War II escape of Americans Damon Gauss and William Osborne. Total Beats, America's best-selling Beats brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews today.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, owner of the company that sells an incredible nutritional supplement called Amino 150. I'm celebrating my 92nd birthday in excellent health and condition because I've been consuming 70 minerals and 80 other nutrients found in Amino 150. I don't have arthritis, diabetes, heart problems, dementia, or anything else. My blood pressure average is 119/72. My PSA is 0.00. I can still run, jump, and climb a ladder, dance for hours, or do anything else I want to do. Now, if you want to live a ripe old age and still have all of your marbles and muscles, you should try Immuno 150. Regardless of your age, chances are you're not in excellent health because you lack many minerals in your diet. Now, don't hesitate any longer. Try Immuno 150 so you can surprise your doctor the next time you get a physical. Immuno 150 may be the best food supplement in the world. Thank you and God bless.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
Hello, I'm Franklin Graham. Jesus said, come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Maybe you've been burdened by the sins of your life and the mistakes, and you just would love to have rest for your soul. Well, I want you to know that God loves you. He made you. He created you. And he sent his son, Jesus Christ, from heaven to this earth to take your sins. That's right. He took your sins to the cross. He died and shed his blood on a cross. And he was buried. But on the third day, God raised him to life. And if we are willing to repent, turn from our sins, tell God that we're sorry, and by faith, believe on Jesus Christ and invite him to come into our hearts, to take control of our life, God will forgive us and cleanse us. And you can have a new life, a new beginning, starting today, right now. Invite him to come into your heart. God bless you.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell at all because of my excess skin. So Nobella changed that.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit total body transformation.
I decided to give Sonobello a try. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is our breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative that sculpts, tightens, and lifts your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside. And Lift EX is exclusively available at Sonobello. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever. Call to book your free consultation today.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
In the last 2 weeks, my Ring camera has sent me to my phone alerts like this. A dark-colored bear walking on the paved area near my house. A bear? That can't possibly be safe. And just yesterday, I got another alert. It said there was a black bear and a white dog. I have a white dog. Is the bear going to hurt Annie, my white dog? Well, here is the black bear. It isn't really a black bear. It's my black dog, Charlotte. Our Ring camera thinks Charlotte is a bear. She's not a fierce bear. In fact, she's afraid of one of our cats. Thanks for watching. Ed Henry, The Big Take, is next. Have a great weekend. Stay with Newsmax.